I don't know why my record. Oh, there it is. So going forward, all of our committee meetings are going to have to be recorded. I just wanted you all to know that. So we'll start with the public safety. I do have Rebecca, my colleague, here to take notes if you're noticing the name. And I've sent you some of the questions in advance. And I know we have folks on the phone, so to ensure that we're going to have people and their ability to participate, especially if they're on the phone, I will be calling out folks to give their response on the phone first. If we can try and keep our thoughts and comments pretty succinct, pretty quick, like to, a minute or two, know that this is not the last time that we'll have this conversation, as well as when we move into the next agenda item, which is going to be led by Heather Gillick and Paulette Will to talk about vaccinations and just really starting to get that input from community on how folks feel about the vaccination itself, talking about messaging, what resonates with you, what doesn't. Paulette and Heather will get a little more into that detail and articulate a lot better than I'm doing right now. Is there any questions before I move forward?
Flo here.
Yeah, Flo?
Will there be a sharing opportunity on the vaccination piece too?
Yes, absolutely.
As well as the public safety?
Yep, it'll be both. Okay, well, with that, I will start with our first question. First, I want to just check with Rebecca if everything's going fine and if you can hear us and if you are prepared to start taking notes.
Yep, I can hear you fine and I'm prepared to start taking notes.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for doing that, Rebecca. So our first question is, what are the biggest concerns or issues you have with the existing community safety system, and what are some opportunities that you think we could have for change? Flo, I will start with you quickly. What is your biggest concern or issue with the current existing community safety system, and what is an opportunity for change?
Most important for me is the maintenance of curb cuts for safety for those of us who are pedestrian or have to take public transportation,
Okay.
and making sure that curb cuts are well maintained.
Okay, so Flo, the main conversation here on transforming public safety has to do with our current law enforcement system.
Okay, there I am not a reformer. I'm a transformer.
Okay.
It has to be a seismic shift and transformative rather than reforms, because reform doesn't work.
Sure. Do you have a suggestion on how that would look?
Well, keeping up with that advisory group on suggestions on how the police and first responders can be revisioned so that there is a training for mental illness and people with disabilities, so that there is a social work component, and it must be community-based, no more imported from outside.
Okay, thank you, Flo. Hazel, are you on the other phone call, the 823 number?
Huh? Say it again?
Oh, I just wanted to see if you were the other. I'm trying to get the folks who are on the phone.
823,
if you have any thoughts.
Yep, that's my number.
Yep. Do you have any thoughts on the question that I just asked?
community safety system that's dealing with the police.
Yep. What are your biggest concerns or issues you have with the existing community safety system? And do you have a thought about opportunity for change?
Well, I guess my big is that being African American, that people are shooting to kill, and especially young men, black men in our community. And why do they necessarily have to always feel that they're in danger when people are running away from them? So there has to be a better way of stopping somebody other than killing them. And so they need to, and also need to learn how to de-escalate and not keep escalating.
Okay, thank you. I think Janet has her hand up. And now we'll just go, does everybody here know how to use the Teams hand, the raise your hand? At the top of your screen, you'll see a hand right there and you would just click on it.
Okay.
Go ahead, Janet.
No, okay. Yes. I think we're moving ahead as far as moving parts out of the police department that are not police related. I think we're moving towards another system for dealing with mental illness. Hopefully, we're dealing with other ways of taking reports that don't require a licensed police officer. I think the real hangup on what we haven't dealt with very much so far is what to do with those areas where we do need a licensed police officer, and also convincing perhaps people in the defund the police movement that that there is a need for licensed police officers, and seriously looking at what the alternatives might be. I think our current police system is tragically broken. I don't think they're going to move from a way of dealing with situations other than killing people who they perceive as dangerous. They're not really taking orders from their top officials. I like the police chief, but I don't control. I like some of the people that are the commanders at the precincts, but again, I don't think they're in control. So we have to looking at this portion of it seriously, as well as those other portions that we're working on.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. DK, I'm not sure who that is.
DK, Dick?
Oh, Dick, yes.
My basic thought is that our training we put our officers through is woefully inadequate. Not necessarily topically, but it's just too damn short. They should have at least probably almost a year's training before they put them out. Just trying to give these guys a couple months of training and expect that to be sufficient is just not doing it.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else before we move on to the next question? I also want you all to know that if you wanted to submit answers to these questions via email, feel free to do that as well. So the next question is, do you have ideas for specific programs, strategies, or suggestions for how the city can improve its safety model? We've heard a few of them right now.
There's two in the lobby. Just letting you know.
I just admitted everybody. Are they still in the lobby, Rebecca?
They're in. Thanks.
Okay, thank you for that. And can I ask who the 612-374-2491 phone number is?
Oh, that is my phone number.
Oh,
Flo.
okay. All right. Thanks, Flo. And I also want to welcome Kathleen Quinn, who just joined us. I'll start with folks on the phone again. Hazel or Flo, do you have a thought on specific programs, strategies, or suggestions for how the city can improve its safety model?
Vis-a-vis the vaccination piece?
Nope, this is all public safety. I'll let you know when we switch, Flo.
No, other than one missing piece. for the deaf and hard of hearing. The mask design, you've got to have a transparent panel.
Flo, we're still talking about the police and public safety.
Well,
I will
any responder interacting, there's got to be means to communicate with someone who is hearing impaired.
Okay, I see where you're going. Thanks for that, Flo. Hazel, do you have any thoughts?
Not at the moment. Come back to me.
Sure. Tom, and then we'll go to Pauline.
I just want to say that I think the current shortage of Minneapolis police is both a short-term problem and maybe a long-term resource. I keep thinking, I had a friend whose brother was a St. Louis Park police officer, and my friend said that his brother told him, and this is even 30 years ago, that when he heard a chase going from Minneapolis towards St. Louis Park, he would turn and go towards it, not because he was trying to stop the fleeing person, but because he thought he was trying to save him. I think there's been a long-term cultural problem with the Minneapolis police.
Wow.
And that this may be the opportunity to change it, just as you get with this big turnover in people.
Thank you for that. Helene.
Well, I have to say that
You're really hard to hear, Helene.
okay. That's better?
Can't hear you, Helene. Sorry. I'm gonna go and see if Hazel has put some thought and then come back to you, Helene, okay? Hazel, go ahead.
Repeat the question for me.
Do you have ideas for specific program strategies or suggestions for how the city can improve its safety model?
I think somebody else was just saying earlier about a longer training period.
Yeah.
I would have to ditto that. And then also, diversity on a good share of all of those programs that's out there. They just want to do things. They make sure they have diversity and have people at the table at the outset of developing plans. Don't make it diverse after you've already established a plan, because then we would not have any input. And I mean, we people of color.
Right. Helene, thank you for that. Helene, did you get your
Microphone working?
Yeah, a little bit. We can kind of hear you.
Anyway, I was going to say that I like the idea of having social workers respond to non-violent interventions. But one thing that I am concerned about is whether the social workers or community action people will be completely separate from the police department. I think that's important that they work under a similar umbrella, because there will have to be a lot of back and forth between them.
Okay, thank you for that. I also saw that Angelique had her hand up.
It's probably it. I don't know.
Or how about Kathleen? I thought you had your hand up too.
I do. Can you hear me?
Yep, is that Kathleen?
This is Kathleen.
Okay.
This is the first time I've used Microsoft Teams. It didn't like me.
Welcome to this challenge.
But I'm in now. I can see pretty much everybody. I can hear pretty much everybody.
Okay, good.
And someone had already mentioned the training. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I had written on these questions was, we seriously need to look at the basic police officer training. Most of it seems to be almost us versus them, and a fair amount of almost military style reaction, and again, a longer training period. These folks may need to go to college for 4 years.
Right. Okay. Angelique, did you have, I thought I saw your hand up.
Well, I'm just kind of sitting here listening to the responses. I think I work downtown Minneapolis. It is my extended neighborhood, and I know that the seniors that I work with, there's many older adults that live downtown, and so going back and forth between Minneapolis Central Library to the other end of the Nicollet Mall, where Westminster Church is at, I get to experience a lot of people who are experiencing homelessness, but also a lot of mental health issues come into play. And so when I think of policing, I'm thinking of people that are responding to crime, right? To protect and to serve. But is the training really there? Or should the responsibility be placed on officers to address the mental health issues, the deep, there's a lot of people that have mental health issues and they're not being treated for it. They're not taking medication. They're not seeing any type of mental health care provider, and so I think that there's a gap there. I think that we need people that are trained to de-escalate, to recognize that this person may be experiencing a mental health breakdown, that this person is not on medication, and could potentially be a danger, but have enough experience to kind of recognize what's a danger and what could again be addressed in a more holistic way, so to speak. I hope I'm making sense. I'm trying to get it out clear, but
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. I know that Beth Winnick had her hand up, and then Paulette will.
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay,
I don't
good.
know why it's saying you're out.
I don't know why. Okay, good. So I totally agree with what Angelique said. I'm a big proponent of departments working together and trying to find solutions through partnerships. And perhaps if the Department of Health and Human Services could work with the police, getting counselors working with police officers and having those two things going hand in hand, whether, we can't just assume someone's the victim of a crime or a perpetrator of a crime. Oftentimes they're just really under a lot of stress. And if they are offered support and services, that can de-escalate things dramatically. But the police aren't trained for that. And that goes back to, I believe, what Tom said about the training. And if they can have almost a checklist of, identifying what the problem is, and I know things can happen really quickly, I get that. But maybe having, two people respond to the scene, the police along with someone from a social service, whether it's getting nonprofit organizations involved, that could be helpful along with maybe Health and Human Services. So,
thank you for that.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Angelique.
I'm sorry. And I was going to say with diverse representation.
Yes, absolutely. Well. And that also, Angelique, you reminded me, I also think we need to focus on recruitment from within the community. And I think having neighborhood representation could only be helpful. I mean, it helps with jobs. It helps with people feeling comfortable with people from their own community. So that was the other recommendation I wanted to make.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to Paulette and then Janet.
And a final thing from Flo on this before we go to the vaccination.
Well, I'm just
I wholeheartedly agree with Angelique.
Janet.
We've got to have a model more out of the crisis intervention area with those trained to de-escalate and talk someone down, and more with a social worker and crisis intervention capacity, so that the use of potential deadly force or even force at all is the last resort, not the first one.
Mm-hmm.
Are we all? Is that what's going on here?
I think Christina is frozen.
Okay, I'm back. You're talking about me. I'm gonna turn my video off because I'm having internet challenges. So I apologize so much for that. I'm not sure where we were. I know I was gonna have Paulette respond. Did you have an opportunity, Paulette, to respond?
No. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're kind of in and out.
Never mind. I don't know what's going on. I'm signed in as a guest, and there's an echo here. That's not going to make it easy for the next segment. So I'm going to skip this.
Okay. Yeah, and then what we can do, Paulette, is have you leave and come back in. And then Janet had her hand up.
I did want to say that training does not, there's no way, well, training is not probably the most effective thing about deep-seated racism. And so one of the pieces I'm finding is that the people are dropping out of the police force are officers of color and other folks that might be more actually, where training might actually work, but or that aren't actually maybe the problem. Possibly having officers, I find it's a deep mental problem within the police force itself.
Yeah.
Therefore, possibly having violence prevention people, people trained in trauma healing, riding with police officers may, on a long-term basis, may be helpful. I'm not quite sure. It's really difficult to say how problems that have taken, basically the training that the current police officers have is 300 years of slavery, and therefore it's going to take 300 years of training to undo that. And so we're going to have to find better ways of solving this issue.
All right, thank you for that. I want to move on to the next question because it does have to do with a lot of the conversation we've been having about alternative policing. So the next question is, the city began working on having an alternative emergency response to 911 calls for mental health crisis in 2019. Have you thought of other types of 911 calls or community safety issues that should be a non-police response? If so, what type would these calls or issues would they be? I'll give an example, such as auto theft. Only because I just had a friend I had to help through who had her car stolen. And then if you are suggesting something, do you have a thought by who else should respond besides law enforcement, such as the examples of mental health professionals? Flo, are you there? Hazel?
Yeah.
Flo, quickly, can you respond to that?
I think the big problem right now are teenagers with armed carjackings happening, and police not being able to contain them and pursuing the same one's multiple calls overnight rather than some means of detention, so that there's some kind of accountability and
Right. Flo?
containment.
Yep, Flo, what I'm asking, is there a situation where police are not needed? Like auto theft? Like I come out in the morning and my car's gone.
Oh, that kind, yeah. Other than making a report. But the carjacking is another kind of auto theft that requires immediate intervention.
Right. Okay, thank you, Flo. I'm going to go to Hazel, who's on the phone as well. Hazel, did you have any thoughts on situations where police now are responding but really wouldn't need to be the one that responds?
Yeah. Because I think the police comes when it's we call 911 for health emergencies. Another thing I was thinking about is when you talk about burglaries, after the fact. I mean, so you have this matter of calling. I don't know who would be, what personnel would be to come to take a report, for a burglary, but that'd be clear that's not an emergency. It's not, it's not a 911. I remember when I had to do that for a friend of mine. I had to go to a house, and what happened was, and I'm taking a little time anyway, that her grandson, his friends, they broke into the house because the window was open. But I had walked in and found them in the house, and I was able to get them all out. But the next time I went, I called, instead of 911, I called 311 because I did want to have somebody escort me in, but I didn't want to make it a 911 call. And so I called 311, but they decided they'll have the police to come, to go in the house to make sure that the friends weren't in the house again.
Sure.
So that's those two instances I'm thinking, because I think they waste time when sometimes the police comes in emergencies when an ambulance should be there, when EMT should be there.
Okay, thank you for that. So there's several people with their hands up, and I'm just going to go in the order that I see them because I don't know who put them up first, but I'll get to you all. We'll start with Tom.
Yeah, yes. In my neighborhood, some of the police calls are security checks. Someone's not answering their phone, or as Flo said, you can see a broken window. I think a lot of those, what you would call security checks, don't need officers. There may be somewhere you hear shouting where that's not true, the same, but security checks as a large class could probably be something where you don't need a uniformed officer.
Thank you. Dick?
My thought, the scariest part is when you've got the problem on the dramatic one, and I'm wondering if a second phone or somebody, you've got a person who takes a 911 call. If you didn't have a social services person also taking calls of that type, because they'd be more able to recognize, hey, this sounds like a psychotic guy. This sounds like that kind of problem, and don't leave it up to the police to decide who they should send or whether they should send a social worker or not.
Okay, thank you for that, Janet.
I think if we had more and better utilization of the civilian crime prevention people, that they also could do more work as far as answering calls after the fact, and also then helping people prevent things like that happening again, because they're the experts on that. And but we don't have as many as we need. All the slots aren't even filled. All the communities don't even have one person available, not talking about probably the number of people that could be utilized.
Thank you for that. And then finally, Elise.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
I would say small traffic accidents, so fender benders or things along that line, don't need to have police officers, but to have someone come and take information. And the other that I would suggest would be concerned calls from citizens, where people sleeping in cars at the end of your driveway or things along that line. So my suggestion.
Yeah, also noise complaints. loud parties, you know,
Yeah.
if there was a community service person that could come and check it out or whatever they'd be called, but it wouldn't need to be an officer that could be going to some real emergency.
Sort of, I think of sort of like a half officer, somebody lower down in the totem pole. Not
Yeah,
like
like maybe a ticket
sort of thing.
Yeah, like
Right. Angelique, go ahead, and you're on mute. Okay. Go ahead.
Well, I also think of situations sometimes where you have a parent who's maybe at their rope's end and they call the police for disciplinary issues. It may not be anything physical going on in the home or it's a domestic situation, but it doesn't warrant necessarily having the police come out to address the issue of whatever is going on between the parent and the child in the home. That doesn't mean that situation doesn't need support, but it doesn't necessarily need to be an officer that comes out to address it.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. If there's no one else, I will move along. This next one is kind of long. I don't know if people had a total opportunity. I'm not going to go through the program examples, but I'm just going to ask the question because the city's Office of Violence Prevention is doing some work to prevent violence in the community, such as people who are treated at hospitals for violent injury. An organization will step in to help interrupt the cycle of violence. High school coaches working with kids. Project Life addresses violence in groups and gangs. The Minneapolis Strategic Outreach Initiative puts teams of violence interrupters, which I will let you know that program right now is on hold. I don't know if you've heard about the interrupters. I know that it has made news. And I can talk a little bit more about the interrupters. I know I had some questions if folks need me to. But they are really, if you're familiar with an organization called Mad Dads, they are just groups of street outreach workers who work with groups of predominantly young men, but not always, and to just be that adult in that conversation. So the question is, what other violence prevention work should the city focus on? And if you have examples, that would be great. This is a tough one because it's really a lot of breaking new ground.
On hold?
What, Hazel?
Why is the Mad Dads program on hold? The interrupters.
So the Mad Dads Mad Dads is not on hold, and they have the same model as the interrupters, but they have not been contracted with. And I don't have the details as to why not. What the city has been doing through the Office of Violence Prevention is reaching out to individuals who are embedded within community. Some of them are longstanding advocates. Some folks are individuals who had previous gang activity, et cetera, and they are contracting with them due to their level of relationship with gangs and other individuals within communities. So Mad Dads is not on hold and they are still operating. The Interrupters program that the city was paying for is on hold for the moment.
Okay, I mean, is that due for the COVID?
I think there is a lot of reasons. There was a newspaper article that the Interrupters themselves felt that that some of the situations that they were getting themselves into, and I don't want to say getting themselves into, but some of the situations actually did warrant the need for their safety. And it really, what it did is it sparked that conversation of where is the role of law enforcement and where's the role of some of the community programs and strategies that the city is exploring. COVID certainly is definitely a concern. The weather, with winter approaching, I think the initial launch went really well, and it's time to step back and reassess is my assumption.
Okay.
But Mad Dads, that organization, is on the street every day. They are still doing what they've always done.
Yeah, Well, on that line, and I just what come to mind is if there was an outreach to like the Boys and Girls Club, if there was, start working with the kids younger.
Okay, so programs, strategies to reach children when they're real young.
Yeah, but like the Boys and Girls Club. I mean, if they're looking to help just reinforce and get to know the community, they can start there, interacting with the kids.
Okay. Yeah, that's a great suggestion. Beth, I know you had a thought. I think you're on mute.
Yes. Okay. So another one of my partnership thoughts is promoting programs like Big Brothers, Big Sisters of America to give, I know I used to do that when I worked in DC, and it was, I had a girl who would come and hang out with me and see what it was like to work in the Senate. And she was in a really rough part of DC in Anacostia, and I hadn't had access to experiences like that before. And I think partnering with kids through programs like Big Brothers, Big Sisters of America, foster grandparents could be ways to go. And having the city promote these programs.
Right. Anyone else have a thought? Go ahead, Kathleen. And you're on mute. Do you know how to click off mute? At the very top of your screen.
Where the little button is.
Yep, you got it.
There. There's an awful lot of early childhood work and intervention and social service interventions that have been suggested here, that have been suggested all over. We need to look not only at the city level, but at the state level at funding those kinds of programs and getting people out there. And I think you do have to start with the children and their parents. And the more we work at preventing the violence in the first place, the better off we're going to be. So maybe the city needs to look at what groups are they going to encourage, help fund, direct people to. Boys and Girls Clubs, all of those, the YMCA, the YWCA, all of those groups that are already doing some good work need to be pulled into this whole discussion, because maybe they will have more to offer. Maybe some of those people got some good ideas, and we can go on from there. And it's not going to happen overnight. It probably will get started in my lifetime, but I'm not sure I will see the end of it.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that. Paulette, I see you have your hand on.
Yeah, I think we all need to recognize that parents are overwhelmed now. They already have children in the home. The schools aren't functioning. None of these programs that we're discussing, they're all on hold right now. And at some point, we have to recognize that life is not going to return to normal, not for a long time. So you're talking about violence prevention. Just how much more are we going to ask of parents who are working remotely, schooling their children at home? We've got to find some kind of mechanism that is realistic, because kids are equally as frustrated as their parents, and they're looking for other kinds of outlets that they wouldn't normally need to look for. So when we're talking about violence prevention, we have to look at it in terms of what's happening in 2021 and moving forward. We have no idea when this pandemic is going to end. So I just recognize that the normal tools that would be at anybody's disposal in the community are just not there now.
Thank you, Paulette. Anyone else before I move on? We have 2 more questions.
Flo here.
Yep, Flo.
A few things. I'd like to see a program similar. I call it Kiss and Yeah. Kids interacting socially with seniors and youth escorts and helpers to provide services to seniors for like picking up groceries and prescriptions, making sure their walk is cleared, and providing those kinds of services, and an expansion of VAWA for those who are victims of domestic violence and fleeing to avoid stalking, and expanding programs like Harriet Tubman, and also doing like an emergency contact. A lot of the violence and horrific behavior is a result of alcoholism and addiction, and make sure that people have access to the 24-hour hotline for AA, for example, if they're in crisis because the addiction is dominating their lives.
Okay, I'm back from my cell phone at this point. My internet's just not going to cooperate.
So those are some ideas, and having some
Can folks hear me?
along.
Yep.
Yes.
Familiar with addiction.
Great, but now my speaker isn't working, so I can't hear you.
I just have one question, Christine. Can you hear me? This is Paulette. Can you hear me? Christina?
Okay, here I am. I'm here.
I have a really quick question, Christina.
Yes.
This whole forum that we're conducting now with regard to community public safety is a result of a letter that we initiated 2 months ago, I can't remember. Do you have any feedback in terms of which members of the city council actually responded to this letter that we generated? I know one member did. I think it was Steve Fletcher, but I don't know if anybody else did or not. Do you recall?
Yep, I'm sorry. So again, I lost you.
What?
I said I lost you, and you said you asked a question. I didn't get it.
Yeah, I'm just wondering what the response was to our initial letter that we generated 2 months ago on the whole issue of senior input into community public safety. We sent it to the city council, we sent it to the mayor. You got one response, and you said you were going to wait and aggregate the response from members of the city council.
So we got response from the mayor's office and a couple members of the city council, which I forwarded on. And so as the city council's directing the Office of Violence Prevention, our letter came up, and we will be involved in any ongoing conversations, not only transferring public safety, but like, the focus that we'll have on our next agenda item. Does that help?
Yeah, I just want to, because this is how this whole issue came up on our agenda to begin with. So I just wanted some context for it.
Right. So, I mean, these conversations were already being talked about. And what our letter did was ensure that we were not forgotten, and that when they're going out to our other communities, especially our cultural communities, that elders are part of that conversation too.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Okay. Angelique, have your hand up.
Well, I had my hand up just in response to, I believe it was Flo that was speaking and talking about youth escorts and people being able to be helpers and having that intergenerational exchange back and forth.
Yeah.
I just think that's a great idea. It made me think of, employing in a youth program where youth are able to receive a stipend or pay to help with that. That was all. I just thought that was a really good idea.
I run a program that does that. That it's called Cyber Seniors, and it helps. We take tech-savvy teens, which these days is any teen that has a phone, and they train seniors how to use technology so that they can be, they can have telemedicine appointments, they can get supplies delivered, they can keep up with friends and family, because it's going to be a long winter and it's super important. So we're running programs right now at the Brian Coyle Center in Cedar Riverside. We're also in St. Paul on the other side of the river. So we've been up and running for quite a while. It's called Cyber Seniors. Any senior can go online, cyberseniors.org, and make a free appointment. They can get a one-on-one phone call. We have daily webinars for seniors for how to do all kinds of different things. And they're also posted as recordings so they can see calls that they've missed.
We're going to need to get you more funding because we're going to need a lot more of those people to be helping.
Yeah, well, we're all over now. The city of Los Angeles just partnered with us because they want us to train seniors how to use their app. They have an app, and so does the city of Minneapolis. But a lot of seniors don't realize they can just look on their phone to see when the next bus is going to come. So they've just given our organization $15,000 to be out there to train seniors, and so the kids have a lot to do. It's a great program. I mean, the kids come out with leadership skills, public speaking skills, teaching skills, and they're constantly told they're geniuses, which is refreshing for a teenager, right? And intergenerational programs are just fantastic for everyone involved. So everyone's getting something out of it.
That's awesome. Thank you. Kathleen, I see that you have your hand up.
I do. One of the programs that had been proposed a year or so ago was hooking up teenagers, maybe through the park board, to help seniors with physical kinds of things. Okay, I'm lucky. I have a neighbor with a big snowblower that does my main sidewalks, and I'm on a corner, so I got a lot of sidewalks. But help with raking, help other people not so lucky with the snow shoveling, all of the things that hook up kids with other people and help the seniors. I realize this isn't really public safety, but if we can stick it in the back of somebody's head to start looking at more, that would be great.
Sure. Angelique, did you have something? I think you're on mute.
I didn't realize I had my hand raised, but I do see again, like there's definitely like a need for those services there because there's so many youth that have absolutely nothing to do and they're bored. And it does tie in with the public safety issue.
Yes, it does.
Had young people that have something to do that they feel good about. It gives them something to look forward to. It gives them purpose, and it's putting some money in their pocket. They'll be less inclined to want to hang out and do nothing and be bored and cause chaos and other things that come about. They just won't get sucked in with that. So
I totally agree with that. We could start something called a neighborhood corps instead of the Peace Corps and say, ask not what your community could do for you, ask what you could do for your community. And the city of Minneapolis could plaster this all over on billboards, on bus stops. We could recruit from each. I mean, Minneapolis is known for how many park and rec centers we have. We have an unusual number of parks and rec centers. And so they could just register at the recreation center. Seniors could register through the rec center. And we could try and get, I mean, maybe we could get some volunteers, like maybe some people who aren't working full time, who have time to kind of match people, and we could ask for a whole community corps.
I love that idea. And I just love, again, because there really hasn't been any campaign that focuses on all of us together being in a community and doing that intentionally in an intergenerational way.
It could be a role model for, I mean, this could then be replicated all over.
Actually, perhaps what we should do is use the neighborhood groups working with the park boards, because the neighborhood groups include a larger community area where the park boards, there are so many of them.
Yeah.
It would be so much fun.
All right, thank you.
I have a question.
Sure. Go ahead, Hazel.
Question. I mean, all what you just said sounds good. I'm thinking about what about the seniors who are isolated, who don't have access to internet? How would they be aware of a program like this that they can get, a youngster to come and help them out?
Well, there definitely
I'm playing devil's advocate.
No, there would definitely need to be, when we start talking about these programs. And for Beth and Angelique, I will spend some time with you outside of this conversation to talk about our Minneapolis for a Lifetime Action Plan, which we're doing another iteration of. And this is where we set out goals, objectives, and actual actionable items, such as funding programs like we're suggesting, and the city council votes on it and then has to back it up with funds. So I'll definitely be sending you that information and how we're going to move forward in that. Hazel, I just spaced on your question.
I'm just concerned about having a senior who is isolated at home, maybe living in their house, or an apartment.
Yeah, we would.
So access to the.
Right. So any project or program, you would have to have a pretty good outreach and engagement plan that's attached to it, because those really are also the older adults who I feel tend to be the most vulnerable and could benefit the most from that relationship with a younger person. And I feel like the younger person would also get a lot of satisfaction out of that interaction as well. Yep. So I'm going to, because we still have that next agenda item, I'm going to kind of roll the next two questions into one because just for efficiency here, although they can be answered the same, because state law requires that licensed peace officers respond to certain types of situations. We want input on how these officers should operate once they do arrive at a situation, such as what policies or practices should they follow, and what can the city do to rebuild or increase your trust in the community's safety model. That's a lot, I know. Hazel, were you starting to say something?
Well, I'm just looking at the question again. I guess one of the things, I don't know if it's if the peace officer, I don't know if they're assigned to district, but they should know the community that they're working in. And I think if so, I don't know how they're assigned to different sections of the city with a designation, but I think it'd be helpful if they know something about the community and the people that live in the community.
Sure. So I'll give you a piece of information. There was a time where City of Minneapolis employees, including law enforcement, had to live within the city. That policy was removed.
Don't anymore.
Right. You do not have to. So we have officers that aren't even from Minneapolis, let alone the community.
Right. Exactly. That's what I know. So that's what I'm saying. So
Okay.
I'm saying, even if they live outside the city proper, if they're working in the city, then I think it behooves them as part of their training, as we call it, quote unquote, that they should learn the cities, like the different pockets, the people that live there. I mean, just know something about the area that they're going to be in. And if they if they are doing cross section for the city, then their homework is just going to be that much more deeper for them to learn about the city and not just to come and work 8 hours and go back home and not
Sure.
get invested in the community. So that's my
Okay.
point.
All right, thank you. We had Kathleen had her hand up, and then Tom had his hand up.
I'm going back to the, what should they do once they arrive? Start with a de-escalation attempt if the situation warrants it. And again, we're back to their training, schooling. The whole program needs to be examined, because it's the little bits that I know of it from a friend of a friend who's in it. It's almost military style. It's again, the us versus them, that whole thing. And that needs to be changed.
Okay, thank you, Tom. And then Paulette.
Yeah, I just would like a little more information on what are the situations where police officers have to respond, because I don't know what they are.
That's a good question, Tom. They did not provide that to me. I'm going to assume that if weapons are involved, I'm going to assume that some of the real extreme level, if there was assault, anything violent. But I can find that out and I will send that to you, because I do want to remind you that we can also, if you want to put more thought to these questions, I sent them out via email, and Flo, I can get them to you and you can mail them back.
Oh, please, along with a copy of that letter, which I never got.
Oh, I put it in that packet I dropped off for you, Flo. There was a lot of papers I dropped off for you.
Oh,
but I'll get it to you again. I'll get it to you again. Okay. Move on to our segment.
I just have one quick comment about what would inspire more confidence in the police department or in the police department. I think the racial disparities and the fewer, if there were more women and more people in the police department, that would, if the police department reflected the diversity of our community, I think it would inspire a lot more confidence. I have yet to, I haven't seen a female police officer for I don't know how long. I mean, they're probably out there, I just haven't seen them. But the police force doesn't reflect the racial disparity and the sexual disparity and diversity of our community. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Any other last thoughts before we move on to the next agenda item?
I just want to, my daughter sent me
Hazel. Go ahead, Hazel.
My daughter has sent me we're talking about the training. I think it really is key. My daughter sent me an email. I have to think if I can find it. About our police here in the United States have less training than other countries. I mean, other countries have far more. I think they have college education and stuff, but a high school graduate can become a police officer in like a couple of weeks here. So I think the training really is imperative. They need to have the extended training, and then you have to have those uncomfortable conversation. I mean, the elephant is in the room is the racism. So if they're part of that training, we're gonna need to see, besides the military discipline that they have, that they need to have those uncomfortable conversations about their personal biases. So that's all.
Perhaps the police department could partner with the University of Minnesota for training programs as well and make that curriculum, some of the curriculum there, part of their training.
Flo? Flo here? Is it okay?
I think we've lost Christine.
Yeah.
Yeah, just
So,
Lost our leader.
yeah, clearly
Yeah.
this is the world today, but do know that not only are we recording this meeting, but Rebecca's taking notes. So again, my apologies. Then the good news, we can kind of finish up. I see that we have Angelique and Kathleen, and then we really do need to move into this next segment.
Can I do just that thought? We used to have a program called COPS, which was community-oriented policing, and a drop-in center in partnership with the Police Athletic League, where teens could, drop in and use exercise equipment, learn how to safely ride a bicycle, shoot pool, talk.
Yep, I know what they provide. So thank you for that.
Yeah,
I really do need to move this along, Flo. So I'm gonna go
redo that kind of a program.
Okay, thank you. Kathleen, go ahead, and then Angelique, and then we need to move on.
Okay, it is 2 parts and really fast. Minnesota requires, I think, a minimum of 2 years of training to be a police officer. And this is back to what do we need to do? There used to be things called repair tags. So if your taillights were out or your headlight was out or your license was expired, all they would do is give you a tag with the date when it needed to be fixed by, and you were on your way, instead of some of the rather excessive responses to those kinds of situations. That needs to come back.
All right,
okay,
thank
I'm
you.
done.
Yep, Angelique?
Real quick, just also having mental health support for officers, because I can imagine what they deal with on a regular basis. And so again, put your police officer hat on in one breath, and then you're going to the next home or the next stop, and now you have to be the social worker. It is a lot. It is a lot for officers. So I feel like they need support in that way too, and something not just a call-in line, dial 1-800 and talk about, something that's really tangible, practical, that they can, a service that they can use for support. So they're not so stressed out and startled.
Maybe even a buddy system with like a retired cop, if that's okay.
Yeah.
No.
Angelique, I really like that. That's first class.
We want to help them. We have to help them help us too. We have to help each other. So that's all I got.
Thank you. So like I said, I'm sure people still have thoughts. Feel free to email me. I will ensure that all of the input that you send me gets submitted. But now I'm going to turn it over to Heather and to Paulette. And the good news is that even if I drop off, like I said, this meeting's being recorded, and Paulette is going, after Heather presents, Paulette will be guiding through the next conversation and taking notes and your input. Go ahead, Heather.
Great. Thank you. And good afternoon, everyone on this call. I appreciate you taking some time for this issue inside of a robust discussion that I was able to hear some parts of. So thank you for your participation in that as well. We do have quite a lot of information to share here. I'm going to do a quick screen share here. I'll also send these slides out so that they can be followed along via the chat. I will also be sending these to Christina so that they can be emailed out to this group. I'm going to go ahead and quickly share my screen and get started so that we can try to stay on track here. Okay. So Paulette and I are going to talk a little about COVID-19 vaccination. It's a very heavy meeting topic set today. And before we kind of get started here, I do just want to note as we're beginning this conversation that the COVID-19 vaccine landscape is changing very, very quickly every day. The information that's available and what I'll cover here today is what we know at this time, and it may be changing while I'm talking. So just as a caveat and to set the tone of knowing that this is very, very fluid information. And we're starting to share this information and do more community presentations like this one and facilitated discussions like what Paulette will go through after this meeting, because it's really important that we start having this conversation even before it becomes crucial that we begin reacting to know what the needs and responses are in the community, and believing that the more information that we can have and share, the more robust those perspectives shared will be. So we'll move forward a little here, and just to set the tone quickly, that the SARS-CoV-2 is the short name for severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus 2. This is the virus that causes the disease, COVID-19, similar to the HIV/AIDS relationship. SARS-CoV-2 is from the coronavirus family and named for the corona or crown-like structures that are visible when it's viewed underneath of a microscope. So just for clarity, when we're talking about COVID-19, we're actually talking about the disease caused by the virus SARS-CoV-2. Just a kind of overview of COVID-19 by the numbers, as I'm sure many of you are aware. This is a slide depicting our 7-day rolling average, the daily number of cases per 100,000 in the population. And you'll be able to see here too that the blue line is the rate specific to the city of Minneapolis. The green line is the rate specific to the whole state of Minnesota. That first uptick closer to the left side of the screen, that's our initial outbreak in April. And you can see we're much exceeding that now. These regular counts, if you're wanting to stay on top of them, can be found on the Minneapolis dashboard as well as the state's health department dashboard. Those links will be included in this presentation, and that will be sent out to everyone as well. So just kind of talking about how critical it is really to be thinking and reacting in this space. So just to talk a little bit about kind of the who's who in the vaccination process. It's not an exhaustive list of who's involved in the development of the vaccine, but this does include the major groups that play an important role in the process. And really thinking about research, development, and manufacturing, as well as the safety and regulation. So we have a lot of different players that are a part of this vaccination development process, and we'll hear quite a lot of them kind of moving around in what we're hearing in news and media about how the vaccine is being developed. For some other level settings, there are many different types of vaccines. These are some of the main types. The live attenuated vaccines are a weakened version of the infectious agent. Some of that examples being like the chickenpox vaccination and MMR. An inactivated vaccine is use a killed version of the germ, like flu and polio, that you might be more familiar with. The kind of protein-based vaccinations that are more related to the types of vaccines we would use for HPV or for shingles, and then those genetic vaccines that actually affect and impact RNA and DNA. Currently, there's no genetic vaccines that are approved for use to prevent disease. However, both of the vaccines for COVID-19 that are the furthest along in the trial and approval process are genetic vaccines that use mRNA technology. And those are the vaccines from Pfizer and from Moderna. Okay, so just to kind of simplify the general process for vaccination approval, this is really the general approval process. And in a non-pandemic timeline, this process would take years. We're really talking about it operating on a much faster timeline. So moving through preclinical testing and through phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 of the safety, expanded, and efficacy trials. And then moving onward toward approval. A limit between kind of phase 3 efficacy trials and before approval is the potential for an emergency use approval, and that is an approval of the vaccine without waiting for the full list of trials. That is something that is expected for the vaccines that are currently in development as they are being produced and distribution is being planned right now. So there are some concerns associated with the emergency use authorization. And right now there are 9 different companies that are applying for EUAs for their vaccines. Inherently, an EUA can be bad if the data doesn't support that a vaccine is safe and effective, but is a good thing if the data shows that the vaccine is safe and effective because it can expedite the distribution of the COVID-19 vaccine. Just a quick update here around the number of vaccines that are currently in development. And this is really important while we think about the vaccines that are moving quickly through this. And again, the furthest along are the Moderna and Pfizer vaccines. This is largely what distribution planning is being based on. Again, a reminder, these are both genetic mRNA vaccines. And the numbers vary a little bit from what's presented here because some are in multiple phases of this preclinical to full approval process. It's important that we have a lot of different vaccines that are in production because it's unlikely that any one vaccine is going to be enough for the entire population of the world to receive. So that also provides more opportunities for different types of vaccines and different methods of distribution. So right now, the composition of the most likely vaccine candidates will all be injections of that genetic vaccination. So far, all requiring 2 doses, 21 to 28 days apart, and will either be frozen or stored in ultra cold storage. So the Pfizer vaccine will require ultra cold storage, Moderna requiring frozen storage. And this timeline has really just again been changing quite a lot as we learn all of these different things, but we may see an emergency use authorization by the end of November with the early stages of vaccines being sent out soon after that. Okay. The vaccine will be distributed in phases, phases 1 through 3. Local public health, state public health, and federal public health are working really right now to develop a federal plan for vaccine distribution. This is going to start largely through phase 1A. These are mostly broken down into A's and B's. Phase 1A will be the first group to receive the vaccine. And that will include healthcare professionals, like doctors, nurses, long-term care facility staff, and be followed by Group 1B, which will expand into other essential workers and folks who are at higher risk for severe COVID-19 disease. For instance, folks with underlying conditions, folks who are over 65, and other kinds of risk factors. Those, even phases 1A and 1B, are tiered in a long way. So we're not entirely sure yet how long it will take to get from phase 1A to phase 1B. Kind of as we're moving through into phase 2, more vaccine doses will become available, and we'll have a continued focus through phase 2 and 3 on vaccinating critical populations as they're defined by the CDC. But as more and more doses become available, then the general public will be able to be vaccinated. Okay. So just moving kind of forward as we're thinking about these different phases and some vaccine planning considerations. There are a lot of factors, some of which we've talked about and some of which we didn't have time to cover, that are being considered in planning and distribution of the vaccine. For example, the cost. The federal government has stated that the vaccine will not have a cost for the person receiving it. We're still working on getting clarification on the administrative costs. You know, the kind of supplies and health practitioners' times for administering the vaccine, and whether or not that will translate into a cost for the recipient and how we can mitigate that. Additional vaccine supplies like coolers, syringes, needles, PPE. We're still figuring out where these will come from, how they'll be paid for, and how many will be available, as that will affect the efficacy with which we're able to do vaccine distribution. And working on ensuring data and technology is ready to be able to report doses administered on a daily basis and sending second dose reminders. Because just to loop back a little, that all of these vaccinations will require a second dose to be effective. Also trying to make sure that we're ready to handle multiple products. If multiple products are approved at the same time, we'll need to make sure that folks are receiving matching doses. For example, if you receive the Pfizer vaccine for your first dose, you need to receive the Pfizer vaccine with your second dose, or Moderna with Moderna. Now, I know that that is quite a lot of information that I ran through at a pretty good clip to sort of keep us on time here. And so I want to also remind folks that this will not be the only opportunity to participate in sharing your perspectives and thoughts on this. And I'll go ahead, Paulette, and turn it over to you here for running through some of these questions and initial responses.
Thanks. I'm just going to run through these questions very quickly, and then I would suggest that Christina email them to everyone for your response. If you want to continue the conversation after I run through the questions, feel free to do it. But I think a lot of these will require some reflection. So the first question, let me just get through the whole thing. What do you think of first when I say the word vaccine or vaccination? What are your concerns? Where are you confused? What gives you hope and courage? Where are you really clear? What questions does this raise? What changes need to be made? What values must we hold? What does this mean for our community? What must we be committed to, and what should this look like? So feel free to jump in on any of these. It's being recorded, but I think, you know, we can have a longer conversation later on, either in writing or later on.
And I also wanted to put out there, this is Christina, before I get kicked off internet again, that we can also, as of now, we do not have a December meeting, but we certainly can structure a December meeting. So I'll send these questions out and we can have that conversation at our December meeting. Anybody have any initial thoughts about the vaccination?
This is Beth, and I just want to make sure that I realize, obviously older people who are at highest risk should take priority along with the healthcare workers that are mentioned, but also our communities of color that have been hardest hit by the virus, are they listed as part of receiving the virus, one of the priority groups?
It is currently a part of our developing vaccine plan to focus on areas of our Minneapolis population that are most affected. This is the kind of feedback from community that will be important for us to get as a part of this data collection, perspective collection process, because of our role with public health. To be able to influence the statewide plan.
Angelique?
So when I think of community, the two words that pop into my head when I think of the vaccine at this moment is you first. You go first, and I'll wait and I'll see how it works with you. And so while one conversation is about, communities of color being impacted because of all the other underlying disparities, there's also a big mistrust within the community about taking a vaccine because of past experiences of people of color kind of being used as, experiments for different healthcare things and vaccines, things like that. So, So you first is what pops into my head. I want people to feel better. Of course, we want a vaccine that's great and that's gonna, keep people from getting sick, COVID. But there's going to definitely need to be some work done around building trust within the communities for people to even want to have the vaccines for some people.
Yeah, I hear that. I come from a perspective of the polio vaccine saving my dad's life. So I'm very pro-vaccine. But thanks for pointing that out.
One of my friends said, I'll take it after Mike Osterholm takes it. Now, Mike Osterholm is going to be going on to the Biden COVID transition team. So there are powerful people in the community that could act as spokespeople for the taking the vaccine and should probably be tapped into. Sports figures, whatever. And Mike Osterholm.
Any other responses?
Go ahead, Flo.
I am in agreement with the infectious disease specialists and epidemiologists. Rather than vaccine, the most effective thing against community spread is the educational piece. Instead of the 3 R's, I think of it as the 3 W's. Wash, wear, and watch. Wash your hands, wear your mask, and watch your distance. And if we do those 3 things consistently and regularly, and make PPE available free rather than concentrating on worrying about the cost of the vaccine, if we can reverse this asymptomatic, widespread community spread that's happening by the 3 W's.
Okay, thank you, Flo. I'm going to have
compliance with that.
Yep.
We can get a grip.
Thank you, Flo.
This is Ellen here speaking, and I would say, Heather, that it's going to be really important that we have very clear feedback to the public as to how the vaccine is rolling out. That if we can show that infections are decreasing as our vaccine population, is as our populations get vaccinated and return to more normal life, that you'll have more buy-in to actually go get the vaccine, and you'll be able to start decreasing the fear factor of taking a new medicine.
Tom, go ahead. I do want to
Yeah,
know
I think
we are just at 2:30. Go ahead,
okay,
Tom.
I just want to say that as far as the you go first sentiment, I think it helps that the doctors and the medical people will be the first to get it, because everybody knows the doctors are going to get something that's going to be helpful as opposed to something. I mean, everybody expects them to get good stuff, not bad stuff.
So we are at 2:30. Thank you for that, Tom. We are at 2:30. We can go a little longer, or as I mentioned, I can mail out these questions and we can continue this conversation in December. I don't have that date in front of me, but it would be the second Thursday in December. Does anyone have thoughts on how to proceed? And will that work for you, Paulette and Heather, with your timeline?
Sure. Yeah.
It would be December 10th.
Yeah.
Mail
as
it.
long as we have a meeting, and yeah, I think that would be fine. A lot is going to change between now and the December 10th. I suspect that there will be a lot more clarification. People will already start getting the vaccines. So, yeah.
I think it'll be important to do both, maybe to loop back with this group at a December meeting with an updated presentation with our new situation at that point. Also, to have you all respond to these questions. It's quite a long list, but we'll be doing a lot of qualitative data processing with each one of these sets of responses. So I would really welcome to hear your feedback and suggestions about questions, concerns, things that we should be doing, values that we should be holding as a larger part of developing our plan. And I will say that one of the reasons that Paulette and I wanted to do this at this meeting as opposed to exclusively in December is because we will have a vaccination plan due from our local public health to the state on December 4th. So initial feedback can help inform what we're putting into that plan. It's very preliminary and will continue to change. But as we receive deadlines, we would like to also receive perspectives. So.
Heather, will you send do you want to send the questions to Christina, the attachment, or she probably already has them?
I haven't yet sent them to Christina. If you want to, you can, or I can.
Yeah, all right. Either way, I can do it if you want. That's fine. Do you have any idea what other communities are doing? St. Paul, surrounding areas? Just out of curiosity, is there a statewide goal to, or is that too premature? We don't know yet when the first vaccines are going to hit. I mean, I'm thinking about a competition, maybe between St. Paul and Minneapolis, like everything else.
We don't really have enough information to know really when things are going to land. It's very unlikely that we will have anything to distribute in the more general public, even further down on that 1B until
March,
at the end of the winter, early spring. Yeah. We may receive small distributions of doses for healthcare professionals in January, but certainly nothing before the end of the year.
Well, what did you say was going to be available by the end of November? You were initially said some vaccinations might be available by the end of November, or was that just approval?
The initial timeline that we received for distribution of the first component of 1A was initially December 1st. It's now January 1st. It might end up being February 1st. That'll be a moving target, I think, throughout this whole process.
Okay. All right.
Thank you all so much for your feedback, and I'll look forward to receiving some more in-depth answers to those questions. Paulette and I would be happy to do follow-up conversations with anyone who'd like to talk through some of this information too. Don't mean to volunteer you, Paulette. I'm assuming you might be interested in having conversations. So correct me if I'm wrong and you don't actually want to talk to anybody, but
well, I love to talk.
You can do some follow-ups. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all, and I will be putting the December meeting on the schedule, and this will probably be the primary thing we'll be talking about. Does that sound good for everyone? Sorry about my technology today. It's kind of brutal.
Okay, it's Flo signing off. Stay well and safe, everyone.
Thank you, Flo.
Bye. Happy Thanksgiving. Stay safe.
Bye, everybody.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Stay safe, everybody.
Thank
Enjoy
you
your
all.
holiday. Thanks to everybody for joining us, and welcome to our new folks. And I'll be reaching out to you individually with some more information about the committee.
Great.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
Yep. Thank you.
Take care.
Yep. Enjoy your weekend. I'm going to go shovel.
Bye.
I know, right?
Bye, Angelique.
Bye, Miss Hazel. Bye, Aline.
Good.
Bye, everybody.
That's my friend right there.
That's
Okay.
right.
Hazel
Hello.
or Helene? Or both?
Both.
Oh, that's
Angelique is
awesome.
Everybody.
That's awesome.
I hope to see you in person soon.
Yes, yes, you will.
No kidding.
All right. Bye now.
Bye.
Bye, Christine.